What's going on, everyone? I'm just a typical average American here today to react and learn about London's boroughs explained. I'm going to be honest with you. When I think of London, when I think of its layout, nothing comes to mind. I have no idea what the design of London is, how it's laid out, where things are, and certainly not what a borough is. I feel like everyone keeps using this word, borough. There's apparently 32 of them. The video that we're watching today is Why Does London Have 32 Boroughs? Everyone keeps using this word, and at this point I'm too afraid to even ask what it is anymore. But I don't have to, because today I'm finally learning. And over the course of this video, I'm also hoping that it will help me just understand a little bit more about the layout and design of London as a whole, and just in general what it looks like and where things are. Just very simple, very basic stuff. That's what I need right now. So with that being said, let's take a look about London's boroughs.
New York City is divided into 5 iconic boroughs. Paris is divided into 20 unimaginatively named arrondissements. And London too is divided into boroughs, 32 of them.
Whoa, wait. New York? That's what those are called?
To 5 iconic boroughs.
Yeah, I know these. Queens, Brooklyn, Bronx, Manhattan, Staten Island. Oh, so those were boroughs. So I kind of am familiar with boroughs. I just didn't know it. Unwittingly familiar. Okay, this is good, but there's still a lot I need to know.
And London too is divided into boroughs, 32 of them.
Wow.
But why 32?
Yeah.
Why not 4 or 703? Why does London, or indeed any big city, need to split itself up into bits?
Yeah, yes, exactly. Perfect. I didn't realize cities were, maybe this is just a me thing. I'm sure if you live in a big city in America, if you live in a big city in the UK, you're more familiar with boroughs and dividing up like sections of areas like that, but I'm not.
Greater London is f***ing enormous. With a population about the same as an entire Switzerland, if it were run by just one council, it would be gargantuanly huge compared to the next biggest one in England.
Wow.
A super council like this would be bureaucratic and inefficient, and there'd inevitably be whole neighbourhoods that get totally forgotten about.
Another reason to divide London up is that it's not just big, it's diverse.
Wait, so just off the bat, we're saying that it's divided up into 32 boroughs, lots of different areas, just because it's huge, and there's a ton of people, and you need a way to split them all up so each, like, sections of where people live can, like, represent themselves in a way? Does each borough have its own, like, little borough mayor that represents themselves, that's elected or something?
From the touristy West End to the densely populated Victorian inner city to the leafy 20th century suburbs, different parts of the capital have different needs, and what they spend their money on is a local decision that should be decided locally.
Okay.
That's why the city is split into several subservient subsections. While London had been subdivided like this for centuries, it had never been subdivided very well.
I guess I just didn't realize that there was this need, there was this much like diversity in where people live and who lives where, and he was even noting how the different neighborhoods and stuff even have their own like characteristics and their own cool looks, that it kind of divides itself up organically in a way, but also for like a purpose so that you can allocate resources better, perhaps?
Before 1965, the area we now call Greater London was made up of 86 authorities, based mostly on ancient church parishes, many dating back to the Middle Ages.
There's lots of evidence of the pre-1965 authorities you can still see today. Walking around London, you may notice street signs that bear unfamiliar names, like Borough of St Pancras,
Borough of Hampstead, Borough of Finsbury, Borough of Holborn, Borough of Paddington.
Some of these old names survive today as parliamentary constituencies, and they also turn up in some unexpected places, such as St Marylebone Crematorium, which is nowhere near Marylebone, and St Pancras Cemetery, which is nowhere near St Pancras.
So this has been going on for a long time. As a matter of fact, there's boroughs that have come and gone over the course of history.
These were named after the councils that built them and not their locations, which in those days were empty countryside.
Okay.
The presence of the ex-boroughs can also be felt in some of the lovely town halls they left behind. Lots of these Grade 2 listed buildings have been turned into things. Battersea Town Hall is now Battersea Arts Centre. Hampstead Town Hall is now Wack Arts Centre. Hornsey Town Hall is now Hornsey Town Hall Arts Centre, etc., 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 etc.
Huh, that's kind of interesting. Like the remnants of all how London used to be split up. Like the remnants today are that there's a bunch of old town halls everywhere from the old way in which London was divided up. And now they've been turned into nifty things like art centers.
So, what was wrong with these old boroughs, and why were they gotten rid of?
Yeah.
Under the old system, in this small area of North Woolwich, the primary school was run by the County Borough of East Ham, the emergency services by the County Borough of West Ham, the public baths and library by the Metropolitan Borough of Woolwich, and the secondary school by the London County Council, all within a 5-minute walk of each other.
Okay.
The 86 authorities varied massively in size and what powers they had. There were too many of them, and it was a cluttery mess.
Yeah.
And so, in the late 50s, it was decided to slim down from 86 to a more manageable number.
What? Like, is from 86 to 32? Is 32 like 86 is far too many. You can walk barely a mile and you're in a different borough already. But 32, is that somehow the sweet spot? Did science calculate this?
Suddenly, every authority in London was in danger of disappearing. Except one. Right in the middle of the map is the very small and very confusingly named City of London. This square mile on the site of Roman Londinium has always done things differently from the London that surrounds it.
Wait, what? What? There's a city of London inside of London? There's a city of London in London. Wrap your mind around that one. Okay. It's got some cool architecture. I gotta admit that. Look at this.
To this day, they have their own separate police force, separate taxes, and separate Lord Mayor.
Huh?
The corporation that runs the City of London is so old, nobody knows how old it is. The oldest document we can find is from around 12-something, with a little paragraph. We could talk for hours about what makes the City of London weird. Basically, due to its historical importance, the city was going to be left alone as it was, but the rest of London was getting a complete overhaul.
Okay.
This is the first attempt at a new map, drawn up in 1957 by the inventor of Greater London, Sir Edwin Herbert, with 52 new boroughs. So why wasn't it used? When this map was shown to the man who had to approve the new boroughs, Minister for Housing and Local Government Keith St John Joseph, he didn't like it for 2 reasons.
Imagine just getting to be the people. Like, I always think of stuff like this. Think of it like this. Like, imagine getting to be the guy who designed London's boroughs, like, redesigned them for the rest of history. And imagine being this guy who got to turn down the proposal for the design of 52 boroughs. And it's just very funny how that's just how things work.
I don't like it for 2 reasons. One, these suburban fringes aren't going to be part of London after all. And B, these boroughs are still too small. A proper borough should function like a city in its own right. It should have a natural centre for shops and services, good
Why is it shaped like that?
unbroken lines of communication like roads and rail, and a population no smaller than 200,000. A tried and tested size for an efficient council.
Okay, but okay, getting back here to a more serious note, they actually put some thought into this. They're like, okay, there needs to be like things that define a borough. Population, like an education center, certain establishments in each borough so that they're not too small. Okay.
And so began the task of creating the new, bigger, more powerful boroughs, each one more equal than the last.
This would be achieved by merging the old 86 authorities together in new combinations. Some neighbours were happy to dutifully partner up, but some authorities, actually most of them,
I love this channel. This video is by Jay Foreman. He's very funny. And these, like this little video game they're playing here to combine the boroughs. I'm sure this is exactly how it happened, right? Okay, some of the boroughs were happy to combine and some were not. Okay.
most of them were not feeling cooperative, making the puzzle much trickier to solve. Bitter long-term rivals East Ham and West Ham were furious about being made to merge. Hornsey was begging for an up-down alliance with lovely Southgate rather than a side-to-side one with smelly Tottenham. Woolwich was refusing to give up its weird little enclaves north of the River Thames, a map anomaly dating back to William the Conqueror. But this was precisely the sort of silliness getting rid of this entire exercise was the point of.
Wandsworth argued that it already met the criteria to carry on as a borough on its own. And it did, but what would then have happened to Little Battersea?
It couldn't join the surrounding Wandsworth, or the new combined borough would be too big.
You know, I still am not sure, like, is there a definition of a borough? Borough. Just to get that out of the way. Like, I kind of get it. We've touched on it. The entire video is about boroughs. I just want to know. It's an administrative division in various English-speaking countries. All right, well, I don't know what I was hoping for. That's about as vague and general as you can get, maybe on purpose. A self-governed walled town. The official use of this term varies widely. Okay, boroughs, just, you know, designated areas, basically.
The only solution was to slice the old Wandsworth in two.
Fights like this were happening in every corner of the capital, but arguably Keith's most controversial combination was here in northwest London.
Wembley was a mostly home-owning, mostly Tory-voting, leafy suburb. Willesden was a mostly renting, mostly Labour-voting urban neighbourhood.
Okay.
As well as being nothing alike, the two sides were isolated from each other. There were only two small roads connecting them. Keith was inundated with angry letters from both sides opposing the merger.
Really?
But since all the surrounding boroughs had been solved really nicely, and he was in no mood to start all over again, the improbable and impractical shotgun marriage between Wembley and Willesden had to go ahead.
Is this like common knowledge for people living in England, people living in London? Is this kind of history of the boroughs common knowledge? I had no idea that this video was going to actually kind of give a fascinating history of not just why we have the boroughs, but like the history of combining the old boroughs into the super new big boroughs. And this is going a different direction than I thought, but it's fascinating.
There was no way to give all 86 authorities what they wanted, but of the thousands of potential solutions, Keith calculated that the pattern to make the fewest people unhappy was this one.
The answer to the question, how many boroughs should Greater London have, was 32.
Oh, so it's like they just played this little game, they forced a couple of boroughs to get along and join, and eventually just ended up at 32 by like process of elimination, basically. It wasn't like this super like intentional number. It's just that what we got. That's what we got, 32.
In the end, Keith did rather a neat job, but the fighting was far from finished. The 32 new boroughs now needed names.
Rather than
Right.
cause any more arguments, Keith let the new boroughs come up with their own suggestions for what they should be called.
Really?
But they came back with some really stupid names, like
they get to decide their own names. That's great. And they started submitting stupid ones, even better.
Osselton Gore, Sorensen Spread, Chigglwanwood, 32, and 3 of them wanted to be called Riverside, including one not on the river.
Huh.
If they want to be trusted to come up with their own names, they have to stick to these rules. A. Give clear indication of location. It's got to be
Okay.
somewhere people have heard of. 2. No silly made-up words. And most important of all, 4. Absolutely no double-barreled or unwieldy long names.
Aw. Dang it.
Under these new rules, most boroughs chose one of their existing names. In most cases, it was obvious which one was most deserving.
Wow, I have never seen like any of these. These are good names. Lewisham, Deptford,
Boroughs chose one of
Stoke Newington, Hackney.
their existing names.
Yeah, oh, okay, the one that's circled is the one. Is that the one that got chosen? Yalling? Ugh, I'm not saying that correctly, am I?
In most cases,
Enfield.
it was obvious which
Bexley.
one was most deserving, especially Harrow. Usually, the honour went to the borough with the biggest population, but sometimes it went instead to the borough considered to be the most historically significant. And yes, this did cause massive arguments.
Yeah. Yeah, changing a name. Like, they're already being forced to be combined into a new borough, but then a huge part of that new borough, that population is being forced to give up their namesake of their old borough. That must have been hard, actually.
It was bad enough being conquered by your neighbour, but imagine having to take their name as well.
Yeah.
That's like telling the people of Scotland you're called England now, except nowhere
Yeah.
near as big a deal.
If councils couldn't agree on an existing name, they either had to come up with a neutral compromise or have a neutral compromise imposed upon them. East Ham and West Ham put it to local residents to pick a new name, which predictably resulted in the suggestions hamstrung, ham sandwich, and ham sweet ham. The councils ignored these and became Newham, or Newham.
Newham. I like that, and it makes sense.
The rest of the new solutions, however, were nowhere near as inspired, and nearly all broke Rule A. Before 1965, hardly anyone was familiar with the ancient names of
Havering, Tower Hamlets,
or Hillingdon, which was only chosen because the grandfather of one of the civil servants was a rector of the tiny parish with that name. More lowlights include Redbridge, named after a red bridge demolished in 1921 that no one remembers, the dully monosyllabic Brent, a poor choice given that a Brent tube station already existed, and
I bet this is, when you think about it, this is probably how literally everything in history was named. Just from the most random turn of events you can imagine.
wasn't in Brent. And in my opinion, the worst one, Haringey, named after a small neighbourhood at the southern tip of the borough, but with one of the R's removed and one of the A's turned into an E. The two spellings have been confusing Londoners ever since.
Okay.
The 32 names had nearly all been agreed when Keith received a letter from the influential and very important Captain John Lichfield, Member of Parliament for Chelsea. The letter said,
"You better not forget the name Chelsea when you name our new borough, or I'm going to come round there and I'm going to wash this.
But I already promised the Royal Borough of Kensington they could keep their name.
he said. What could he do? To save his...
I don't know. It's funny because I don't know the ending of this story, because I don't know if there is a Chelsea or a Kensington. Is there both? Somehow there had to be a Chelsea, right?
own skin, he let both sides have their way, producing the absurd dodecasyllabic The Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea.
Keith's own rules made
Okay.
it very clear that this sort of name wasn't allowed, and it was quite an insult to the much larger groups of people who'd campaigned hard for And Deptford and Battersea. As usual, it was one rule for the very posh who get taken seriously when they complain, and another rule for everyone else.
After decades of pressure, the ministry relaxed the ban on and in 1979 when Hammersmith gained an and Fulham, and in 1980 when Barking gained an and Dagenham.
Really? 1980? As recently as 40 years ago, the names of boroughs in London were changing? That's pretty fascinating. I mean, that's kind of cool that it's not like so precious that they're willing to change it to reflect like history a little bit better.
And that's how we got the 32 boroughs with the 32 names that we're still using today.
Wow.
But that's only half the story. How are the London boroughs run today? How
Yeah.
is life different from one borough to the next? How
Yeah.
can you tell when you've crossed a border from one to the other? And
Yeah.
which borough has the best logo? Find out all of this
Right.
and less in part 2.
Oh. Wait,
I'm
really?
thinking of downloading NordVPN to encrypt
Wait.
that internet traffic and protect.
Wait, is that actually serious? Is it really in part 2? No way. How could he do this to me? Okay, well, let me see what he has to offer in part 2.
32 boroughs with the 32...
How is life different from one borough to the next? How can you tell when you've crossed a border from one to the other? And
Yeah.
which borough has the best logo? Find out all of this and less in part 2.
I mean, that sounds really fascinating. I feel like I've only learned one half of the story now that there's a part 2. That settles it. I'm definitely going to react and watch part 2 at some point. Maybe after this one, to be honest, since I'm on the topic of London's boroughs. So definitely keep an eye out for that. Anyways, as far as this video goes, I very much enjoyed this. I love this guy, Jay Foreman. He is so freaking funny, and his editing is amazing and funny, and he's educational. And I had no idea that the London's 32 boroughs had such a fascinating history. And yeah, this video just kind of accomplished everything I was hoping it would. It didn't really tell me too much about modern London and the layout, and like he said, what specifically is the difference between boroughs in like the modern age and how they're separated. But apparently, if I watch part 2, I can find that out as well. So I'm content for now. I'm content. I enjoyed this. Anyway, if you enjoyed this as well, feel free to give this video a like or leave a comment. And if you're interested in more videos like this, me reacting to the UK culture, Britain, stuff in England, any of that stuff, feel free to subscribe for more. And until then, thanks for watching, and see you next time.